afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, here in New York City. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're following the final Lunchtime Focus Keynote here at 12th Cloud Expo New York. We are delighted, one more time, to be serving you with lunch. We are being served it because Citrix are here and want you to go away not just with a full mind, but also a full stomach, which is a very noble aim in this ethereal cloud era. Let's not take up any time. Let's give a large round of applause, thinking that the lunch is on her, to Krishna Subramanian, VP of Product Marketing of Cloud Platforms at Citrix, following on from Sheng's keynote this morning. Krishna, the stage is yours. Oh, they like the lunch. There were good things in it. Good luck.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you all. Hope you're enjoying the lunch. And what I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about our customers and how they're actually transforming to the cloud and what we're seeing in terms of lessons they've learned, what works and what doesn't. Before I start, I'd love to hear from you, how many of you are deploying in the public cloud today? Just a show of hands. Okay, good, small number. How many of you are deploying private clouds? Okay, about half and half. Great, that's very helpful. So at Citrix, we've been working with customers, both enterprises and service providers and web scale companies in deploying their clouds. And today, we have nearly 200 clouds in deployment that are production clouds, clouds at scale. Many of them in thousands of servers. Some of the larger ones are 30 to 40,000 servers per cloud. So we have some experience with our customers in terms of the types of clouds they're deploying and the lessons they've learned. And that's really what I want to focus on today. I want to share with you the vision that our customers have when they're deploying clouds, key design considerations that they're taking, the benefits that they're getting from the cloud, and what are some simple ways in which they got started? Because it sounds like from the show of hands, about half of you are looking at public and private clouds and are already deploying, and the other half are probably exploring right now, so it might be helpful to see where to begin. So let's first start with the strategic vision. So Jeremy made an interesting point in the morning when he introduced Sheng from Citrix, and he said that Sheng's presentation had nothing about the cloud. It talked about moving from infrastructure as a service up stack. And the reason it didn't have anything about the cloud is because we see this with our customers. When CIOs are looking to transform to the cloud, they're really focusing on delivering anything as a service to users. And the reason for that is because we, as users, our expectations have changed dramatically with consumerization, right? Most of us today carry 3 to 4 devices. You know, we have a mobile phone, we have a tablet, we have a laptop, we may have a desktop. And through each of these devices, we connect to cloud services. Most of the things we use don't run locally. There may be a small footprint locally, but they're really talking to a cloud service. And many of the apps we use is just a web front end talking completely to something that's running in the cloud. So mobility and cloud are two trends that are absolutely reinforcing one another and driving consumerization of IT deeper and deeper. To the point where now, we as users, at home, we're used to going to an app store, downloading an app, instantly getting access to what we want, without ever picking up the phone and asking someone to provision something for us. And when we come to work, we wonder why we're not getting that same experience. Why does our travel app or our budgeting app, why does it require a special approval process? Why does it take days or weeks to get something provisioned at work when at home we can get this instant access? So that consumerization has really changed user expectations and behavior to where users now want instant self-service access anytime, from anywhere, on any device to any service. But there's a second wave of consumerization that CIOs we talk to are seeing. And that second wave is even more profound in some ways than the first wave. Because the first wave was really about end users wanting access to apps anywhere on any device. But the second wave is line of business IT and developers are responding to that end user need by going out to the public cloud and just leveraging public clouds for their applications. So they want to deploy something, they want to deploy it quickly, they just go deploy it on a cloud elsewhere. And this usage of cloud services is growing very rapidly. And IT wants to respond to this need by turning the IT model. IT wants to be a service provider today to end users. So when we talk to CIOs across industries, they all tell us that their model is changing. It used to be that IT was focused on building a few mission-critical applications, and it didn't matter if it took weeks or months to get your next SAP deployed or Oracle deployed. The key was that you got it right. And that was the model that they were focused on in the past. But increasingly, that's not how they look at their business. They look at themselves as an internal service provider. IT is becoming a business function where IT's job is to aggregate and deliver cloud services. They're almost a business governance function where IT is curating a storefront of cloud services, some of which are internally run, some of which are run externally. It doesn't matter if the service is deployed on a private cloud or public cloud, whether it's an internal app or a SaaS app, IT wants to be the one that's pulling all of that together, delivering it to users, enabling self-service for both end users and developers, but IT's role has changed. IT is now a service provider. This move is something we're seeing across industries, and I'll give you some examples of customers that are successfully making this transition today. So IT is essentially becoming the service provider that's aggregating all these different cloud services and delivering it to users. And to do that, what companies are doing is they're building up a stack. They're taking their workloads and they're orchestrating them on a cloud platform. So they're changing how they were running workloads. Traditionally, they would run Windows desktops or apps on a virtualization platform. They're changing that to orchestrate on a cloud platform because now it's all about migrating those workloads from public and private clouds seamlessly, connecting across clouds. So the cross-cloud capabilities have become increasingly important, and brokering and aggregating them has become important. And this is the Citrix stack that our customers use. We have Zen Server at the bottom to virtualize the platform. We have NetScaler for our cloud networking. We have the Citrix Cloud Platform powered by Apache Cloud Stack as our cloud orchestration layer. Zen Desktop does our desktop virtualization. Zen Mobile handles mobile apps. And Cloud Portal aggregates all of these together. So I just wanted to show this just to show you the stack that our customers are using. And I want to get to actual customer examples. One good example of a customer that is deploying IT as a service successfully today is in Germany. It's called KIVBF. This is the government of Germany, and it's the IT department for 560 government agencies in Germany. So if you think of our Department of Motor Vehicles here in the US, the German DMV is supported by KIVBF. The German Ministry of Education is supported by KIVBF. So it's a central IT organization for all the 560 different government agencies. And they recognized about 14 months ago that their role was changing. They used to have IT teams dedicated to each of those 560 agencies, going on site, building services and supporting users at each of those agencies. And they made a shift, and they said they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to act as a service provider to all those agencies. And so they really embraced this vision of IT as a service. So they built out a data center. They run the largest public data center now in Germany. And they created a multi-tenant cloud on that data center. So all these 560 agencies can share the infrastructure available on this multi-tenant cloud. and they have different apps running on that cloud for their different agency users. So for the DMV, they completely virtualized all their desktops. The virtual desktops are running on that cloud platform. For different, they have things like database applications running for some of their users. And the goal is any department, IT, can go and self-service provision the apps they want for new users and et cetera on their own. So this central organization is acting as a service provider, and the IT for each of those agencies becomes almost a customer, a tenant of that service provider, and is managing the set of apps for their agency, but it's all run centrally. And they're very, very happy with this model. It's clearly a journey. They're not completely there. I mean, they're making several steps, but today they have several apps running. They have desktops running, and they have the infrastructure completely running as infrastructure as a service. But the point is, they don't see themselves just as a cloud, and they don't see this as infrastructure as a service. They're really focused on this self-service IT as a service, delivering any app that any of their users want as a service, and they see their own role now as a service provider. Another customer that has made this transformation pretty successfully and is on this path is the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. They're one of the largest universities in Latin America. They have about 100,000 students. They have 11 campuses. And they used to have 11 campus data centers. And they had about 90 different IT organizations servicing all these users. But the problem they had was, student frustration among users was high in terms of what IT services and response users were getting, because people had to fill out a form, ask for an app, wait for weeks for something to get provisioned. It was very bureaucratic. Researchers felt like their high-performance computing applications, they weren't able to control it the way they wanted to. Students wanted to play with cloud technologies. They were not able to easily provide a commodity, low-cost way for students to do that. So they, too, decided that they want to change their model. And they made a decision to become a service provider to all their students and professors. So they centralized, and they created this USP data center for all their users across all these campuses. And they made it multi-tenant. They're running apps on it. And in their case, they've actually created 3 zones in that data center, because they realized that the service level that students need is very different from the service level that high-performance computing applications need. And the hardware they would use for a zone where students could play with things is very different from what they would use for their HPC applications. So the Citrix Cloud Platform technology has a way by which you can actually segment your workloads and create zones for different types of applications. So you could have a zone for using commodity hardware, low-cost VLANs and no SANs, direct attached storage, for more cloud-era applications where the software can handle the failure. And you could have a different zone for traditional database and other applications which require hardware resiliency, which may require SANs, dedicated networks, et cetera. So you could actually segment and create different zones for these different applications, and that's what USP has done. They have a student zone, they have an admin zone, and they have an HPC zone with different characteristics, different SLA levels, and different ways by which the service is delivered. So this is another example. So the first one was in government. The second one is in education, of customers making this move to IT as a service. The third example is one of the world's largest petrochemical companies. The company is actually Pemex. It's based in Mexico. And they, too, wanted to have a simple way to rapidly provision applications across the globe, across different data centers, different business units. And they wanted to make it easy. Being in the petrochemical industry, they have a lot of third-party contractors who get engaged. They have offshore drilling locations that they have to spin up and spin down quickly. So they wanted a templatized architecture that's very easy to replicate and can be replicated on demand. And that's what they've done. They've built that, and they're delivering that to their users. So these are 3 examples from government, from education, and from oil and gas of customers that are making this shift to IT as a service. And I do a lot of customer presentations at Citrix, and I can tell you that almost every company that we host in our EBC talks about the same thing. We hear this requirement that IT is fundamentally shifting their paradigm. They're changing. The cloud is almost a standard that they're embracing, and it's all about hybrid clouds, managing across them, and about IT being delivered as a service. But this is a theme we consistently hear from customers. So a big part of enabling IT as a service is going beyond infrastructure. Because turning your infrastructure into an elastic cloud infrastructure is important, but it's not sufficient to do IT as a service. Critical to doing IT as a service is being able to aggregate and deliver any cloud service, whether it's run by you or run by someone else. And so at Citrix, we have a product called the Cloud Portal Business Manager that enables this. So we have a simple way by which an IT department can set up a catalog of services, and these services can come from anywhere, and they can control who gets, they can give workflow and control who can access which service, whether approvals are required for someone to access it, whether there's a chargeback or showback for it, or billing. You can actually consolidate billing, so if it's billed to a third party, it can still go from the corporate account, so the company gets visibility into what services are getting charged for. You can connect it to your help desk, et cetera. So you can really create a simple interface for users to access services with a complete reporting dashboard that gives line of business users and IT visibility for governance and compliance purposes on what actually is happening, who's using what the system is doing, et cetera. And you can actually set it all up. It's very simple. It's all web-based. And you can set a shop, and users can actually connect in. They can not only self-provision cloud services, they can also self-provision virtual desktops, apps, any of these things that you want can be provisioned through that portal. So hopefully this gave you a sense of the vision that our customers have around IT as a service, some examples of customers that are successfully making that transformation, and how a cloud portal or a business management interface is a key component of that transition. At this point, what I'd like to do is switch gears a bit and talk about the first step that many of our customers took, because clearly getting it all together into IT as a service is their vision, and some of these customers have been our early adopters that have made it, and are delivering that full IT as a service. But many customers aren't there yet, right? Many customers we talk to want to do IT as a service, but most often where they're at is they have virtualized many of their workloads. They have, they definitely have a data center, and most of them are experimenting with clouds. They may have some pilot cloud deployments running, but IT as a service is a vision for them, but they're not there yet. Most customers are still looking at their cloud orchestration and thinking about how to do cloud orchestration in order to get to IT as a service. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how our customers are making their design choices when they are in those pilot phases. So one of the things we often see is that when customers pick cloud pilots, for obvious reasons, you want to pick some workloads that are easy to move to the cloud. So typically, this would be like a dev test use case, or workloads like web front ends, or load testing, or big data, more cloud-like workloads that need elastic capacity and are easy to run in a cloud. And that's a great place to start. But the challenge that companies run into is that when they want to expand from those cloud workloads to really go to IT as a service, they realize that most of the apps they have are not cloud workloads. Most of your Windows desktops, Windows apps, your mobile apps require resilience in the hardware because they were built pre-SaaS. And they were not built, even SaaS apps, many of them require traditional Oracle database underneath them, or an SAP database. And they were not designed with a fail-anywhere commodity hardware type of architecture. They were designed expecting that a SAN would be keeping the state of their data, that things would get backed up somewhere, that the hardware would be fault tolerant. So a lot of traditional apps expect the hardware to handle a lot of the resiliency and fault tolerance. And those workloads, any traditional server virtualization workload fits in that category. Those workloads, if you just took them and just ran them in an Amazon-like cloud, you're not going to get the same SLA that you had internally, because the hardware here doesn't handle the failure the way your traditional data center hardware handled failure. So you need to architect differently to be able to run those workloads in a cloud. Then there are cloud workloads, which is what most companies typically start with in deploying on a cloud, where the software is designed to run on commodity scale-out hardware. The software handles failure. The software might have redundancy built in, and it handles things. So it is okay to run those things on a cloud. The challenge we see with customers is that sometimes they start with those cloud workloads, and then they realize they have all these traditional workloads, and the architectural design that they made when they took that first step might limit them from expanding. So really, they want an architecture that runs both these workloads well. And no matter where you start, it's important to keep that in mind as you're building your solution. So what we've done at Citrix is our Citrix Cloud Platform, which is our cloud orchestration solution built on Apache Cloud Stack. It's designed to handle both of these use cases. So it lets you set up an availability zone for each of your workloads. And you can build a traditional availability zone, which includes SANs and dedicated networks, et cetera. And you can set up cloud availability zones, which use VLANs and direct attached storage. So you can actually set up different zones for these different workloads, and it's all managed consistently from the same platform. And that's important as you scale, so that you can actually have zones and can segment your workloads and still consistently manage all of them. So our Citrix Cloud Platform is the only solution today that can handle both these workloads. Typical cloud architectures are either designed to be Amazon-style clouds, or they're server virtualization plus. And the challenge, if you just did the Amazon-style cloud architecture, is you cannot accommodate traditional workloads. And if you took a server virtualization plus solution like a Microsoft Virtual Private Cloud or vCloud, the challenge is you're not getting the cost efficiency for your cloud era workloads, because it's requiring more expensive hardware than what you'd want for your cloud workloads. So you really want a solution that can provide both. Some examples of customers that are using these multiple zones. I mentioned University of Sao Paulo actually has multiple zones for their students. Another example, also from education, is the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, also a very big university in Australia. And in their case, they actually give students something that they call RMIT bucks. So when you sign up for a course, you get some funny money that you can use towards the RMIT cloud. So you can actually go and provision, for your classwork, because they really want students to innovate. So they created this low-cost zone in the cloud where students can just go, they can buy capacity, they can write a gaming app or write any app they want and really try it because they want to foster that innovation. And it's completely separate from the zone that they have for their faculty, because for the faculty, they have more high-end kind of networks and dedicated support and a different SLA level than what they're doing for their students. They are finding this program to be very successful. They feel like their students are getting an opportunity to really innovate and try and play with new projects more easily by doing this. Another example of a customer that is building different zones for different users is Bechtel. They're a large architectural firm. They're globally located. They have offices in many, many countries. In their case, because they are in the construction business, they have to rapidly spin up new offices because they may go to a site and they need to create some computing capacity on that site for their workers to use. And so they created sort of a cloud-in-a-box architecture. They've created a templatized cloud with servers and with the infrastructure, apps, et cetera. And they have different ones of these for different applications. And they actually just ship them out to a site because some of their sites don't have good connectivity. They may be in a place that doesn't have good bandwidth back. And so they can spin up clouds on demand very rapidly at these sites and enable the sites. Another interesting example is actually a web company, a gaming company, who's also a Citrix customer. This is actually Zynga. Zynga is the gaming company. And in their case, what's interesting is that they use the public cloud to prototype a new game. And then when it starts getting good adoption, they actually bring it back. So it's a hybrid cloud use case where they first test on the public cloud, and then they bring it back in-house as it starts scaling. And so it was really important for them to have one consistent architecture across the public cloud and their internal cloud. So they're using Cloud Platform to do that. And they use RightScale for this hybrid cloud management on Cloud Platform. So hopefully you saw some good customer examples of how customers are moving to IT as a service, how they're going beyond infrastructure and actually delivering any app as a service and aggregating different apps. And you got a sense of the key design considerations customers are making when they're starting with their infrastructure. Some of the benefits that our customers highlight, because I know one of the things as you move to the cloud is how do you justify its value? Because everybody talks about agility and efficiency, et cetera. But the cloud is different from server virtualization. For server virtualization, the value prop was clearly cost savings through consolidation. In the cloud, it might actually be a little more expensive upfront to move to the cloud because it is a different architecture. So how do you justify the ROI for cloud? And for these customers, it was a no-brainer. I mean, what we're hearing from customers is the efficiency that they'll gain by improving, by templatizing and standardizing and reducing having to support so many one-off stacks, the efficiency gain is very high. And the second thing is agility. I mean, they really feel that there's a level of frustration with users in terms of the response times that IT is able to support. And it's a no-win situation because IT is not getting more resources and yet is being asked to do more with less and have higher user satisfaction levels. So it's really more and more with less and less. And the only way they see out of that is using the cloud because enabling self-service is a key requirement and a key value that our customers see in going to the cloud. And the third thing is really a business priority, and it's governance. Because one of the challenges with shadow IT, it's not even that shadow IT is bad, it's great indication of early adopter interest in the cloud, But the challenge is lack of governance for a business, because when your users are using services that you don't even know about, there could be security issues, operational issues that the company is just not aware of and cannot, and yet is liable for. So governance is the other big value they see from moving to this IT as a service model, because now you get a consistent view and visibility across all the services that users and departments are using. So how do you get there? If you're thinking about the cloud and if you're looking at your own cloud projects, what are some good places to start? We see that most customers start by shifting some key workloads to the cloud. I mean, typical examples are more, cases where you need seasonal capacity or elastic capacity, like training and demonstrations or dev test, or backup and disaster recovery we see a lot of. And in some cases, production applications, like web scale applications, GPU-intensive applications is another area we see a lot of, things like CAD and high-performance applications where centralizing the compute power makes a lot of sense. So it still makes sense to start with some of these key workloads and move them to the cloud, but it's just important as you do that to think about the longer-term vision of where you want to go. And if you believe that that vision is IT as a service, you want to think about the other workloads you would need to support in a cloud and other environments you would need to support, and ensure you have an open solution that can accommodate all of these. So that's in a nutshell is the presentation. Hopefully you got a sense of IT as a service, how customers are using it, what industries are using it, and where they're starting. I want to, at this point, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to this presentation, and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Krishna. Let's see. Actually, a little technical thing. Before we go to questions, somewhere is the second microphone. Can you just look to the side of your seat? We can hear it in the room. My second microphone.
Oh, there is one here.
That second microphone.
Okay.
We didn't think of looking there. Thank you so much. A question for Krishna. Sorry, I interrupt your applause. Let's just applaud again, because it was a good question. It's difficult to do this without two. Who would like to kick off on the Q&A? Come on, Krishna, where do you think? Do you think it's coming from the left or the right? Or do you think the lunch was so heavy that we've stupefied them as well as informed them?
Well, I have a question actually for the audience.
Turn
I
it
would
on
love
them.
to know if the response we see from customers is similar to what you're saying. I mean, is IT as a service, is this theme something any of you are thinking about? Would love to hear yes or no.
Okay, so raise your hand if it resonates with you, all the things you've been hearing. Absolutely, look at that. Goodness gracious.
Wow.
Thank you. Now, audiences rarely raise their hands, Krishna, so that's quite a validation. Raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, I nearly tricked you. There you are. You see, tricked Tony Shan into having a question. It was clever, huh?
Since nobody, I just kick off. I think a great presentation, talk about a lot of things, your vision, your company, some use cases, very applicable. I think my question is, looking ahead, right, with the cloud, with the big data, what do you think, from your organization here for the cloud cloud platform, the portal, how do you move forward dealing with like mobile data, social, big data, what is your vision company to serve the customers?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, how do we see the world moving forward, especially with mobile and big data, et cetera. And, we definitely see that trend towards mobile. We see that a lot, and a lot of customers are definitely thinking mobile first when they're building their app strategy today. And how we support it is in two ways. The first thing is, in a world of mobile first, what's really important is to have an extensible platform, to have the APIs, because in mobile, a lot of these users are building apps very, very, very rapidly, and they want to be able to very simply connect them back and to be able to aggregate them and deliver them. And so that aggregation element has to be very lightweight, because if it takes a long time to integrate that into our cloud portal and then to show it, it's almost like, the development cycles are so short and so rapid that the model has to fundamentally change. And that's what we're working on. So we're working on a very simple way to aggregate that's very lightweight and is completely API-driven and easy to automate.
Good answer. Question from over here on the far.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. So my question was, you spoke about public cloud and private clouds that your customers have built using Cloud Stack. How many of those customers are also thinking about using additional technology? So in other words, not being embedded with a public cloud provider, but using multiple public cloud providers, or not just using, let's say, Cloud Stack for their private clouds, but using other technologies, let's say OpenStack. So rather than think about just a hybrid cloud, but think about a multi-cloud world.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Definitely, we're seeing that customers do want mix and match. I mean, this market is very early, and technologies are still emerging, and standards are still emerging. And one thing Citrix as a company overall has always believed in is anyness, what Citrix calls anyness. If you look at desktops and apps, Citrix didn't just pick a platform. Citrix supports any device access to any desktop. And if you look at what we have done on the hypervisor layer, Citrix has Zen Server, but we also support KVM, we support ESX and vSphere. We support all the hypervisors in Cloud Platform. So to answer your question, will we support multiple clouds? Yes, our Cloud Portal layer supports aggregation across multiple clouds. And in fact, Cloud Platform is completely Amazon compatible. One of the things it has is a complete AWS API to it, because to that point that we see users wanting to use different environments. We don't expect that it's going to be a world of homogeneity. We expect anyness, and we want to support anyness.
I like that, anyness. That's another term that I think must resonate. Another question, come along. At the back, here I come. Always beware the guy at the back. This is usually a trick.
So the question is regarding an enterprise building a private cloud. At what scale? So we have built a private cloud, which we believe is much more expensive than what a public cloud would have been as a cost per VM. Do you have looked at data that shows if you're an enterprise of such a scale, needing so many VMs, it makes sense to not build a private cloud, but if you exceed a certain level, you need to go to a private cloud?
Yeah, it's a question of kind of cost efficiency and scale, and when does it make sense to switch from a private cloud to a public cloud. It's an interesting question, because a lot of people think about public cloud, especially if you think of Amazon, really as a cost efficiency solution. And interestingly, we've seen customers have experiences that support it and also that don't support it. And I'll give you one example. One of the customers I mentioned was Zynga. So in their case, they actually used Amazon and public clouds when they were prototyping, because they found it to be cost efficient to do small scale deployments there. It was more expensive to build a private cloud for a small scale experiment. But as they started growing and as their scale expanded, it was actually more expensive to run on a public cloud and less expensive to run in-house. So the cost metrics may actually favor private cloud at scale, because you have, especially if you are multi-tenant and you're running multiple internal applications, it may be actually more efficient to run it internally. The second thing we hear from customers when they're looking at public versus private clouds is design considerations that go beyond cost. For either compliance reasons or security reasons or service level reasons, they need certain networking architectures, they need certain resiliency in the hardware. There's certain things they need that a generic kind of public cloud cannot deliver for them. where they need to run it privately, either a virtual private cloud or in-house private cloud. So, I don't know if that's answered your question, but these are some things we see.
He's a happy customer. Any more for any more? Well, then, let us instead please thank Krishna for a fabulous
Thank you.
lunchtime keynote.